The Roman Empire is one of the most well-known civilizations in history. Their innovations in law, language, architecture, and engineering continue to influence the world today. But did you know that there were also many Roman inventions that were lost to time? Here are some of the most fascinating examples. Number 10. Roman concrete. Modern concrete is often seen as a miracle building material, but it was actually invented by the Romans. They developed a type of concrete that was stronger and more durable than modern concrete, which allowed them to build structures that lasted for centuries. However, the Romans didn't use steel reinforcement in their concrete, which is what gives modern concrete its strength. Without steel, the Romans' concrete was more susceptible to cracking and breaking down over time. The secret to their success lay in the fact that they used volcanic ash from Mount Vesuvius in their concrete. This made it stronger and more resistant to water, which is why many Roman buildings and monuments are still standing today. Unfortunately, the recipe for Roman concrete was lost after the fall of the empire. Number 9. Roman glass. Roman glass was some of the finest in the ancient world, but it was also very expensive. The Romans used a technique called glass blowing to create objects of incredible beauty and delicacy. However, this technique was a closely guarded secret by the glass blowers who didn't want their skills to be copied. After the fall of the Roman Empire, the art of glass blowing was lost. During the Middle Ages, glassmaking was done by craftsmen who were considered to be outcasts or even slaves. They weren't allowed to use the sophisticated tools or techniques of the Romans, and as a result, the quality of glass suffered. It wasn't until the Renaissance that glass blowing began to improve again. Number 8. Roman roads. The Romans were known for their extensive road system that allowed them to move troops and goods throughout their vast empire. These roads were built to last, and many of them are still in use today. But the Romans didn't just build roads. They built them with a special technique that made them incredibly durable. They used a layer of large stones at the bottom of the road, followed by a layer of smaller stones, and then a layer of concrete. This made the roads incredibly strong, and they could withstand the weight of heavy loads. Unfortunately, this technique was lost after the fall of the empire, and many of the roads fell into disrepair. Number 7. Roman numerals. Roman numerals were used throughout the Roman Empire and were based on the number system used by the Etruscans. Unlike our current system of Hindu-Arabic numerals, Roman numerals are a positional system. This means that the value of a numeral depends on its position in the number. For example, the Roman numeral L stands for 50, but if it's placed before the Roman numeral X, it stands for 40. Roman numerals were used for centuries and were even used by the Mayans. However, they were eventually replaced by Hindu-Arabic numerals because they were much easier to work with. Number 6. Roman fire pumps. The Romans were aware of the dangers of fire and took steps to try and prevent it from spreading. They developed a type of fire pump that was used to pump water from a source, such as a river or a fountain, to a tank. From there, the water could be distributed to different parts of the city through a network of pipes. The Romans also used a type of fire engine that was pulled by a team of horses. This engine had a large bucket that could hold a lot of water and was used to put out fires quickly. Unfortunately, both of these inventions were lost after the fall of the empire. Number 5. Roman medicine. Roman medicine was highly advanced for its time, and the Romans made great contributions to the field of surgery. They developed a type of antiseptic that was used to clean wounds and prevent infection. They also developed a type of plaster that could be used to set broken bones. The Romans were also some of the first people to use anesthesia in surgery. However, after the fall of the empire, much of this knowledge was lost, and it was until the Renaissance that surgery began to improve again. Number 4. Roman shipbuilding. Roman shipbuilding was highly advanced for its time, and the Romans were able to build ships that were larger and more powerful than those of other civilizations. They developed a type of ship that was known as a merchantman, which was used to transport goods throughout the Mediterranean Sea. The Romans also developed a type of warship that was used in their navy. These warships were typically equipped with one or more decks of soldiers who could fight using bows and arrows or javelins. Unfortunately, after the fall of the empire, much of this knowledge was lost, and it was until the Renaissance that shipbuilding began to improve again. 3. Roman pottery. Roman pottery was some of the finest in the ancient world and was known for its beauty and craftsmanship. The Romans developed a type of pottery that was made using a technique called the lost wax method. This method allowed them to create incredibly detailed and intricate designs. The Romans also developed a type of ceramic glaze that made their pottery even more beautiful. However, after the fall of the empire, this knowledge was lost, and it wasn't until the Renaissance that pottery began to improve again. 2. Roman agriculture. Roman agriculture was highly advanced for its time, and the Romans were able to grow a wide variety of crops throughout their empire. They developed a type of irrigation system that allowed them to water their crops even in times of drought. The Romans also developed a type of plow that allowed them to till their fields more efficiently. This allowed them to produce more food for their growing population. Unfortunately, after the fall of the empire, much of this knowledge was lost, and it was until the Renaissance that agriculture began to improve again. 1. Roman aqueducts. Roman aqueducts were some of the most impressive engineering feats of the ancient world and were used to bring water into Roman cities from distant sources. The Romans developed a type of aqueduct that was supported by arches and bridges, which allowed them to carry water over rivers and valleys. They also developed a type of aqueduct that was built into hillsides, which allowed them to conserve water and reduce waste. The Romans used the water from their aqueducts for drinking, bathing, and for watering crops. Unfortunately, after the fall of the empire, many of the aqueducts fell into disrepair, and it wasn't until the Renaissance that water engineering began to improve again.